mentioned productive struggle, and I want to just come back and define that for anybody who isn't familiar with that term in education. Can you just sort of contextualize that and why we would think about that with AI?
Yeah, sure. So productive struggle has a lot of different terms, but basically it's a key ingredient for learning. So the premise is students need to feel a sense of struggle in order to learn. Not too much, right? And not too little. And that goes to concepts like zone proximal development, which is this idea that if students have the right kind of support, they can do tasks that are challenging for them and they will learn. But if we give them tasks that they can't do with support, then they get frustrated or they get anxious and they aren't able to learn the task. If you've read the book Flow, it's a very similar concept. And so the idea of productive struggle is we know that students need to do things that are hard in order to learn, but they shouldn't be too hard. They should be challenging in a productive way. And that is really the sweet spot that teachers are aiming for when they're doing instruction or when they're designing assessments or when they're working with students in the classroom.
Okay, great. Yeah. So, all right. So let's link that then to the concept of AI, right? Because I think that's at the root of a lot of people's fears about it. Cheating is sort of one end of that where you would say, okay, so it's not the student's work, but part of the reason that you need it to be the student's work is in order for them to actually learn from the experience. And so if the student is saying, Professor Hudson gave me this prompt that I need to write about, I'm going to take that, copy and paste it into ChatGPT and get a working paper that I can then submit for my grade, then the student hasn't worked with the information. So that's sort of one end of the spectrum of fears, right? The cheating, academic integrity. And so how do you help people? You can't say it's not going to happen, right? You can't say to someone, no student in your classroom is ever going to use this for cheating, and so therefore it's fine. How do you help people understand that there are benefits, that they would give it enough weight that this is worth doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for giving me a pay raise and calling me professor. I appreciate that. It's a really gray area right now. And it's a really gray area because these tools, these AI tools are evolving really quickly and what they can do is really changing. And so for me, with any innovation in education, you think about the calculator, you think about Google Translate, you think about the internet. You've got to be super clear about what you're trying to assess in the first place, right? So what is the thing we want students to demonstrate to us? What is the sort of skill? You can think of Bloom's taxonomy as an example of like, do we want students to evaluate? Do you want them to create? Do you want them to analyze? If you're super clear about what you're trying to assess, then you can probably also identify the things that are not that important in the process. So how might a student use AI to get closer to that sweet spot and then dedicate themselves to learning based on the thing you want to assess? So the example that I give often is, obviously, we don't want AI to write an essay for a student in English class, right? As you said, but if the goal is students demonstrate that they can craft a solid argument, what's the sort of argument against allowing them to use AI to help them figure out how to improve their quote integration, right? So not about choosing the quote, but about smoothing the integration of the quote into the text, for example. If we're teaching a drama class and we want to assess students on their acting ability and their scene construction, is it a problem if they get AI to write the dialogue for them? These are the questions that I don't have. Maybe Professor Hudson has the answer to all those questions, but I don't have the answer to these questions. Yeah. I mean, that's why I really advocate for just a lot of open conversation among teachers and with students around, what does it mean to do this work with the help of AI? Where are those boundaries? How do we co-construct some norms and guidelines around those things? Of course, there are non-negotiables. I think you articulated one really well. AI can't do everything for you. Okay, but we also live in a world where I don't think it's reasonable to say AI can't do anything for you. So we have to find together the middle ground where we can be confident that learning is still happening.
Did you learn something just now? Get the full episode of Ways We Learn wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, we'd love to get your rating or review.